It is one of the hottest segments in Australia, and ute manufacturers are keen for your cash. So we've assembled 6 of the best dual cab 4-wheel drive utes that you can get for about 50k. Today, Trent and I are going to join the rest of the Car Advice crew to do some rigorous testing and find out which of these 6 deserves your cash.
The Isuzu D-Max has just been updated with a new engine and gearbox and also a minor facelift. The updated Volkswagen Amarok Core is the only ute here with permanent 4-wheel drive, and it also has a rear diff lock. The Toyota Hilux is the staple in this segment, and this Workmate version is the only manual on test. The Mitsubishi Triton has just been updated, is the most affordable automatic on test, and now gets Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The new Holden Colorado is the segment leader for torque and has extensive Australian ride and handling engineering. The Ford Ranger is designed and engineered in Australia and is comprehensively packed with 4-wheel drive hardware. So let's start testing.
First up, we're going to test the load carrying capabilities. We'll be using a pallet with 750 kilograms on it and taking each ute on the same urban loop, complete with potholes and speed humps.
The best-selling car in Australia in 2016 was a ute, the Toyota Hilux, and it's a ute that's considered one of the best in the class because you cannot kill it. So today we're going to put the load in the back and compare it against its competitors to see just how much room it takes up in comparison to the others. We're also going to see where we can tie it down. The Hilux only has points on the outside, not on the inside. And most importantly, we want to see how much sag we get at the back. So when this load goes in, you're going to see this come down, and Matty's going to measure it with the measuring tape to see how it compares to the rest in terms of the percentage of sag. Have a look at that. That has gone down a lot as that weight has gone in. And as you can see, comparative to the front, this has gone down a lot more. So as you're driving, you're going to feel like you're pointing out to space. What we'll now do is jump into each of these cars, head out onto the road and see how they perform with a load in the back. We've set off in the Hilux with 750 kilos worth of load in the rear, and while that's enough to unsettle most utes, the Hilux is coping with it quite nicely. We don't have that rear steering feel that you get in some utes with load where the back end becomes a bit skittish. The brake pedal feels fantastic. The only thing we're longing is a bit of torque. It feels like it could do with just a bit more punch with that kind of load in it.
The best load hauler on test was the Amarok, followed closely by the Hilux with the Ranger in third. Amarok impressed with its ability to remain composed. The Hilux carried the weight effortlessly, but a lack of tie-downs hurt it, while Ranger remained comfortable and easy to drive, but was let down by brake performance. The next test is a particularly important one, and it's a test that we call Urban Ride. The reason I say it's particularly important is because while we want to focus on towing and off-road driving, driving on dirt, most people will spend most of their time doing exactly this, driving around town. As you can see, we've jumped in the Isuzu D-Max, and while it's not as luxuriously appointed as some of the competition, it's really impressed us with its ride around town. The other thing that we really like about the D-Max is how bulletproof it is. They've proven over the years to build an extremely reliable diesel engine. There's no reason to think this vehicle will be any different. And you have to try really hard to kill one of these. So if you use it for work and you need it to last the long distance, this is the kind of vehicle you should be looking at.
Tree-lined roads, rolling hills, this is where the Ford Ranger really excels, out in the Australian country. And it's because this car was designed and engineered right here in Australia. That means Aussie engineers spent a lot of time and legwork on country roads to tune the ride and handling. And they've done an exceptional job because it soaks up everything you throw at it. Everything from potholes to corrugations it has no dramas with. The ride is comfortable thanks to these excellent seats. And we did some 4-up testing as well to make sure that when you do have a full complement of passengers, it feels just as good with them on board.
Now, hardcore off-road work is one specific discipline that's very important in the portfolio of one of these dual cab utes, but so too is this kind of driving, which is unsealed dirt roads. The The Colorado is a lot better than the model it replaces. It's all new and it's a significant step forward. But crucially, it's got a suspension system that's tuned and designed in Australia, and what that means is it's perfect for this kind of driving.
This tussle is closer than ever before, with the Amarok nudging ahead thanks to a permanent four-wheel drive system that offers peace of mind on unsealed surfaces. The Ranger comes in a close second due to its easy steering and compliant ride, even on poor quality roads. The Colorado was not far behind, courtesy of its Australian ride and handling tune.
Our third test was all about the cabins of the utes. Let's see how they stacked up.
The Ford Ranger is the most expensive car we have on test here, but sitting in this seat right here, you would never pick it. And that's partly due to the fact they don't use Sync 3, which is Ford's latest and greatest infotainment system. Instead, they've gone with this ancient unit that looks like it was pulled from a car 10 years ago. The tiny little screen does your infotainment, but it also does the reversing camera, and it's really hard to see. And elements of the interior feel a little cheap as well. You've got very hollow plastics, a plastic steering wheel, where the rest of the cars in this segment really try and step it up a notch and give you that value for money feel.
The Amarok impressed on every level. However, it came last because it doesn't have rear seat airbag protection. A must in our opinion. So in the end, Ranger came third. The Hilux came second, but it was the Mitsubishi Triton that impressed us the most and took out the top gong, mainly because it's the most passenger-focused of the group.
Now, there's absolutely no doubt that the Mitsubishi Triton feels particularly premium, especially when you take into account the price point. This is not an expensive ute. It's got Apple CarPlay, it's got a crystal clear screen, it doesn't have proprietary nav, but then most of them don't in this segment, and it's also got a really good reverse camera, which makes hitching up the trailer particularly easy. But wherever you look inside the cabin, it feels like you've spent a whole lot more money than you have to get into a Triton. It's when you start towing that the Triton illustrates the fact that it's not actually the best tow vehicle in this test, and there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, you've only got 133 kilowatts and 430 newton meters. That's compared to something like the Colorado that has a whole 500 newton meters, so there's a big difference. Beyond that, you've got a small capacity turbo diesel engine, but perhaps most crucially, you've only got a 5-speed automatic. Now, you might think that with 5 speeds compared to say 8 in the Amarok, that the Triton would be changing gears less, but that's not actually the case in reality. It's still hunting up and down the gearbox a lot, trying to find where it needs to be for the road speed that you want. So when you add all of that up, what you get is that the Triton doesn't quite have the guts to be an excellent tow vehicle.
If towing is your caper, you're going to absolutely love the Holden Colorado. And that's because it's got 500 newton meters of torque available. In fact, it's so good it doesn't even feel like there's a boat on the back. It gets even better downhill, where it uses a Grade Logic braking system where it preserves your brakes by going down through the gears.
The Colorado set the towing standard, with the Ranger the next best. The D-Max also performed well because of its truck engine.
It's in situations where you have tyres off the ground that a genuine four-wheel drive comes into its own. In the really tough stuff, the Triton struggled due to an interruptive traction control system and no rear diff lock, whereas the Hilux and Ranger made light of the rutted terrain. When the going got really tough, there was an unexpected standout off-roader.
The Volkswagen Amarok is the odd one out here, and that's because it doesn't have a low-range gearbox. Instead, Volkswagen uses an 8-speed automatic with a tight first gear ratio to simulate a low-range gearbox. It also comes with a rear differential lock plus an off-road mode, and that off-road mode is really handy in mud and on gravel where hitting the brakes allows the ABS to engage lock for a little longer and build up a wall in front of the tyre. In fact, this thing really doesn't need low range because we were able to drive to Cape York last year over the old Telegraph track. And that is a really treacherous thing. To give you an idea of just how impressive it is, we're going to sling it through some mud. Absolutely no dramas at all, it just troops through. This is really an impressive four-wheel drive that shows that you really don't need low range in 99% of situations.
The most effortless four-wheel drive on test was the Amarok, which didn't even spin a tyre. The Ranger was next best, even though it was harder to drive smoothly thanks to its hypersensitive throttle pedal. The Hilux's extra tyre width helped it into third place, but its ride was definitely jarring and a little harsh.
We rated the Mitsubishi Triton the highest for value. The only Eurobadge contender here, the Amarok, was second. While the Colorado's list price at least is higher than the Volkswagen, we suspect you'll be able to get a good deal at your Holden showroom. Vehicles like these mid-grade four-wheel drives are all used for work, so taking into consideration downtime and servicing costs over the first 3 years of ownership, the most affordable is the Isuzu D-Max. Then it's a big step forward to the Volkswagen Amarok as the most expensive.
So guys, the judges' scorecards have been tallied, and keep in mind that we've done this anonymously so that the other judges didn't know how we were all scoring, and we have what I would call a clear winner, the Volkswagen Amarok.
Hold on, Trent, we've got a big problem.
You've got a
very big problem.
Yeah.
There are no rear airbags,
This is
which
true.
means I would not, under any circumstances, buy that car.
However, keep in mind, and you'll see this in the review, we've penalised it very heavily in the interior stakes because of those lack of rear airbags. So, with that taken into account, it's still come out as a clear winner.
Okay, you've got a good point there because over the course of the last 5 days, this car has well and truly stood out across all segments. Despite the fact it has no low range, it's great off-road, it's very comfortable inside, and it has the most premium feeling interior, despite the fact it is one of the oldest cars in the segment.
So the message here is if you're going to use your ute as a workhorse, if you're going to really test it heavily Monday to Friday, the best all-rounder is undoubtedly the Volkswagen Amarok. However, if you're going to put your kids in the second row or use the second row more regularly, there are 5 other utes in this test, so if you go and read the full review, you'll be able to see where they rank below the Amarok.
In the interim, if you want to see us compare the Amarok against anything else, or if you want to see any other comparisons, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe and head to caradvice.com to see this full comparison.